Welcome back. Joining us today to talk about what's at stake in the 2020 election is Washington State Governor and presidential candidate Jay Inslee. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
What a treat. What a beautiful morning.
We're glad to have you in here.
It's beautiful because you're here, Governor.
I've never heard that before in my entire campaign, so thank you.
All right.
Here, I'm
If
first.
my wife was here, that would be true.
Well, don't tell her I said it. Governor, I want to start off with a tweet from Politico. It says, Washington Governor Jay Inslee told the DNC, or said the DNC informed him it will not dedicate one of its presidential primary debates to the issue of climate change. You've been working hard to make that happen for a long time. Are you now going to host your own town hall or kind of forum to have that conversation?
Could be. We might have to do that, but right now I'm trying to convince the DNC to listen to the hundreds of thousands of voices in the grassroots who really are calling for this debate. We know this is the existential threat. We know this is our last chance to literally save, this little blue planet from this catastrophe. And the Democratic Party is the only party who can produce a candidate to do that. So we need to have a full, fair debate. And 9 state chairs are now going to bring a resolution to have this debate. We need to make sure that the candidates are all called up to really put their cards on the table. I have a plan to defeat climate change. I'm the only candidate in the race who is saying that this has to be the first priority of the next president. If it's not job one, it won't get done. And I'm the only candidate that says we have to do what is scientifically required, which is to stop using coal in the next 10 years, stop having fossil fuels in the next decade and a half, stop having cars that are putting so much pollution out in the next decade. So I think it's really important for candidates to be called before the public and know what their plans are. If we have to go a different route, we may, but that shouldn't be necessary. I'm really hopeful that the grassroots are listened to here.
Well, you mentioned the grassroots, and Extinction Rebellion and emergency climate activists have gone so far as to superglue themselves to the top of trains and to the sides of trains in London. Do you think that's an effective tactic?
If you look at the progress in America, most frequently when we've had a big progress in social justice, it's involved some nonviolent civil disobedience. And, Martin Luther King understood the power of nonviolent civil disobedience. And if that's necessary to get this job done, I cannot speak against it. But, it shouldn't take that. It should be making sure we have leaders who will step up to the plate and say they're going to get this job done. I've been fighting this for almost 2 decades now. I've established the Climate Alliance. We now have 24 states that have joined Andrew Cuomo and Jerry Brown and myself. I actually co-authored a book about this 12 years ago. So I'm ready for this job. We have to have leaders who will make this the #1 priority of the United States. And I'm capable and committed to doing that. Nothing else will do for our grandkids.
You mentioned civil disobedience. Would you yourself be willing to be arrested to prevent climate change?
I suppose, but I think it's better to get elected president of the United States. I may be able to be more successful in that particular position rather than in the oozgow. But listen, I am so inspired with people. I was on a park bench here in New York in front of the UN with a 14-year-old woman named Alexandria Villaseñor. She's leading the students' climate strike every Friday in the United States. This generation of leaders, I love to see that people are standing up. They're calling for their elders to get off the dime and save them from this moral outrage. And I'm committed to doing that. I'm the candidate who is committed to doing that. So I look forward to having a full debate on this.
Great.
One of the things that I learned this morning when I was reading up about this issue is that we could actually face a beer shortage in the future because of climate change. And you yourself have said that you are a beer lover. Would you be willing to give up beer if it meant helping the planet?
I think we should have both a beer and a healthy planet, and we need to have both. I was at the floods. I've been really on a tour of the disaster that people are now experiencing. I went to Paradise, California, met people whose homes were burned down, a town of 25,000, torched right to the foundations. I was in Davenport, Iowa, and I went to a brewery that was flooded out. And a comment I made to the gentleman who runs the brewery is that, look, climate change is a problem. But when breweries are drowned out, that's a crisis. And we have a crisis right now. It is a crisis. It's causing tears across the country. In Davenport, I saw a woman who has a nonprofit to help victims of domestic violence. She's had it. She helps 1,500 young women, not so young women, a year, and now it's destroyed. And her tears are real. We need someone in the White House who's made a commitment like I have. And I got in this race for a reason. I decided that on my last days on Earth, I wanted to be able to look my grandchildren in the eye and said, I did everything humanly possible to defeat climate change. And that's why I'm in this race. And I've got an experience as governor of Washington, having passed the best 100% clean energy bill, the best clean buildings bill in America. I want to bring that to the United States, like all the other things I've got done in my state, which is the best gender pay equity, the highest teacher pay increase in the United States, the first public option, the first net neutrality bill. I want to bring all the success that I've been able to achieve in my state to the people of America, and I'm ready for that job.
And speaking of states, I'd love to get your thoughts on new legislation that was introduced yesterday in New York that's seeking to decriminalize sex work. You in the past have been asked by BuzzFeed for your position on the matter, and we have not received a response. So today we'd love to hear your thoughts on the decriminalization of sex work across America.
Well, my view is the federal government should not intrude. I'm not proposing any federal legislation on this regard. But I will mention something, maybe you think it's off topic, but I don't. Those workers and everybody else have to have access to health care. And this is an important issue because a lot of people who have been in this area need to have two things. One, number health care, and one, the women, and they're principally women who are involved in this, need to be treated as victims rather than perpetrators. And I do believe the law enforcement community needs to change the orientation where the real perpetrators, which frankly are 90% men, those need to be the people involved in the law enforcement activity, not the women who are victimized very frequently, including in slavery and trafficking. And so we have been very active in my state to crack down on the trafficking that occurs. The tragedies of young women who are brought into this is just heart-rending. So that's what we're involved in my state.
And you mentioned giving health care and taking care of people that are workers here. So are you saying that you do think this type of work should not be punished at all?
I'm not. What I'm saying is I'm not proposing any federal changes in law. There's state laws. I'm running for a federal position. But I believe we need to change our health care laws where everybody has access to health care. And that's why we are the first state to have embraced the public option. So I've been the first governor to extend a publicly sanctioned health care plan for people in my state. We've also done the first long-term elder care in the United States. So we're busy expanding health care. Health care ought to be a universal right. We're doing this and moving in that direction in my state. I'd like to do that as president.
Well, speaking of healthcare and access to healthcare, at a New Hampshire campaign stop in May, you said that abortion access should be a civil right, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What exactly did you mean by that?
What I mean is it should be treated as a civil right, meaning Congress should pass and the president should sign a bill that guarantees in federal law the right of access to a woman's right of choice. We should not just depend on a Supreme Court decision. It should be the law of the United States by statute. And I want to extend to all of the women of the United States what we've done in Washington State, which is to make sure that you have health care insurance for access to your family planning as well. So we've passed one of the best reproductive parity bills in the United States so that women have access to their insurance policies, and the insurance companies can't deny women health care reimbursement through their health care plans. That needs to be a federal civil right as well. So I'm eager to do this. I've been very engaged in this effort, for decades. I don't know how people for 40 years have not understood that the Hyde Amendment needs to go. I've been fighting against the Hyde Amendment because if this is a constitutional right of women. It shouldn't be illegal for, to deny poor women access to these services. This is a constitutional right. And so I've had this position for decades, and I will maintain today, yesterday, and tomorrow. I'm going to be fighting for the rights of women.
So speaking of position, we have a tweet from Lil Nas today.
For who's it?
Lil Nas X.
Lil Nas X. Sorry, he's a young rapper. And he says, when I said I got the horses in the back, it was in reference to reversing the ongoing climate change, water pollution, and catastrophic political climate we are witnessing in these trying times.
And you said, I like this remix. Now, Old Town Road is more in line with your platform, but did you avoid using it as your walkout music because it's Tim Ryan's song?
Well, I actually know Tim Ryan. We were roommates in Congress at one time, so that was not a problem. I have to admit, though, that I got overruled on walkout music. I wanted Born to be Wild, and somehow my campaign staff overruled me at the last moment. That'll never happen again. We're going to have a little more vigorous music next time.
So that's why you had Mr. Blue Sky.
Yeah. Well, you talk to my staff about that.
All right. We'll have to do that.
I like the blues, but I don't know. The blue sky might be a little too much.
All right.
Oh, God. Well, thank you for joining us today, Governor.
Thank you.
Also
Thank
now
you so
known as
much.
Mr. Born to be Wild.
Oh,
It's been really,
okay.
really great to have you.